I'm very dissatisfied with what Russia's doing and what President Putin is doing. I haven't liked it at all. He's killing people for no reason whatsoever, and they are doing very poorly, considering they have put it all out on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing the hell out of everything, and they're picking up a very little territory, if any. In fact, they're losing some territory. So I think it's been very bad for the reputation of Russia.
Europe decides to shut down Russian fighter jets violating its airspace. Russia threatens all-out war. Meanwhile, US President Trump says that the Russian economy is going to hell. How did Europe get to shutting down Russian fighter jets, and has Russia understood this final warning from European countries? European diplomats have privately warned Kremlin that NATO is prepared to respond forcefully to further airspace violations, including the possibility of shooting down Russian military aircraft, according to officials told Bloomberg. This warning was delivered during a meeting in Moscow where British, French and German diplomats confronted Russian officials over a recent incident involving 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered Estonian airspace. The European side concluded that the breach was not accidental but likely a calculated move by Russian army. Russian officials, however, denied that their planes entered NATO and insisted they are not seeking to provoke alliance. They also claimed that a separate drone incident involving Polish airspace was so-called mistake. The situation has become dire as Russian attack on Ukrainian civilian targets increase, and political uncertainty in the US puts future military support for Ukraine in question, according to Bloomberg. Also, Bloomberg reports European leaders are growing more concerned that Russia may be testing NATO's willingness and ability to respond to such provocations. One European government source stated that NATO countries are prepared to take defensive actions if these violations continue. During a Moscow meeting, Russian diplomats reportedly tried to justify the airspace incursions by pointing to recent Ukrainian operations in Crimea, which Russia claims were enabled by NATO. From the Kremlin's perspective, this already places them in conflict with European NATO members, according to the Russian propaganda. Officials who attended the meeting said Russian side took detailed notes, suggesting they were instructed to report back the NATO positions to Russia's high command. German official later confirmed that European ambassadors told Moscow that future incidents must stop. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz emphasized coordination with allies like France, UK, Poland, and says that all necessary measures are on the table. So far, UK and French governments have not commented on the meeting, while French President Emmanuel Macron avoided publicly detailing what NATO's response might be to future violations of airspace. This growing tension has triggered renewed use of NATO Article 4, provision for consultations. It has only been invoked 9 times since 1949, but 2 of those instances happened just this month after incursions into Estonian and Polish airspace. Denmark is also considering invoking Article 4 following drone-related disruption in its airspace to be linked to Russia, although Moscow denies this. Some European officials and analysts believe Russia is trying to exploit gray areas in NATO's rule of engagement using hybrid tactics that fall short of conventional war but still pressure NATO. Danish Justice Minister Peter Hummelgaard describes this as a long-term threat meant to destabilize and divide alliance. Speaking at the UN, Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said he believes Moscow is deliberately testing NATO's reaction time and unity. According to Bloomberg, his view reflects a growing belief among Eastern members that alliance must act swiftly and decisively. Still, the risk of escalation remains a major concern for some European states. While some leaders like Poland's president and Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof have publicly supported the idea of downing Russian aircraft as they breach NATO again, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius warns that firing on Russian planes could play directly into Kremlin's hands, pushing NATO into conflict. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni also stressed the importance of avoiding unnecessary provocations. These recent incidents have also exposed real gaps in NATO's readiness. On the eastern border, for example, Romanian authorities tracked a Russian drone inside their airspace for an hour on September 13th. Despite having fighter jets in position, they choose not to shoot it down due to the risk of debris falling on civilians. Only this week did Romania National Defense Council approve clear rules of how and when to shut down unauthorized aircraft. According to officials, Romania also struggles with outdated equipment and limited funding. They noted that using expensive missiles to target drones, as Poland did, is not sustainable. Meanwhile, President Trump has changed his position on Ukraine. He expressed the belief that Ukraine is capable of winning its war against Russia. Trump made the remarks on September 23rd following a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky on the sidelines of UN General Assembly in New York. In a post on Trust Social, Trump said Ukraine has the potential to push Russian forces out of all occupied regions, citing what he described as a weakened Russian economy. He characterized Russia as a paper tiger, suggesting its capabilities are more fragile than they appear. President comments mark a notable shift from earlier position in which he floated the idea of brokering a peace deal that could include Ukraine ceding some territory to Russia. Trump now appears to be more backing a more ambitious outcome: full Ukrainian territorial restoration, including Crimea and parts of the eastern Donbas region, which have been occupied by Russia since 2014 and 2022. In his statement, Trump emphasized that Ukraine's ability to win is contingent on long-term Western support, not just for the US, but primarily Europe. He pointed to the importance of sustained military aid, financial assistance, and strategic coordination throughout NATO, while also underscoring the need for patience and time. Also recently, President Trump didn't hold back in slamming Vladimir Putin's war effort in Ukraine, saying Russia is getting crushed both on battlefield and economically. Trump said he has been watching the situation closely and deeply disappointed in Putin's leadership, arguing that Moscow has bombed Ukraine while gaining next to nothing in return. He pointed to Russia's collapsing economy, describing it as going to hell, and said Kremlin has poured everything into war but is still losing ground. Trump emphasized that despite waves of drone attacks, Russian forces have barely moved to the front lines and are losing the terrain. Quote, "The war shouldn't have been over long ago." Trump suggests contrasting Russia's stalled campaign with how quickly he believes the US could have wrapped it up. As the conflict drags into its fourth year, Trump framed it as a major embarrassment for Putin and global blow to Russia's reputation. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's inner circle and battlefield intelligence played a key role in convincing him to adopt this tougher stance on Putin. The Wall Street Journal reports that in the days before his public shift, Trump received briefings from administration officials, Kit Kellogg, his special envoy for Ukraine, and Mike Waltz, U.S. ambassador to UN. These briefings highlighted how Russia had gained very little despite heavy offensives and laid out a planned Ukraine's counteroffensive that would rely on U.S. intel. Trump was told that Russia's battlefield performance was weak and that Kyiv's upcoming operation could succeed, but only with U.S. backing. The narrative also attributes part of the shift to Zelensky's diplomatic posture. After a controversial earlier meeting, Zelensky's more measured tone before and during UN session also reassured Trump's advisors, enforcing this case to President Trump. Meanwhile, European leaders have met Trump's recent statement with a mix of cautious optimism and concern, according to reporting by Politico. While some welcome Trump's acknowledgement that Ukraine can win the war against Russia, many remain wary of his unpredictable approach to foreign policy and its possible impact on transatlantic unity. President Zelensky expressed hope following his meeting with Trump at the United Nations, emphasizing the importance of sustained Western support for Ukraine's sovereignty. At the same time, several European allies privately voiced apprehension that Trump's shifting rhetoric could send mixed signals through Moscow, potentially emboldening Russia or complicating efforts to maintain unified support. European allies underscore the necessity of steady, coordinated response throughout NATO and EU to counter Russian propaganda. Politico also noted that European governments are closely watching Trump's evolving stance on NATO. In summary, European reactions reflect a pragmatic balancing act, hopeful that Trump's tougher tone signals greater support for Ukraine, but cautious about the uncertainties that come with his changing foreign policy positions. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.